Recording in progress.
Ladies and gentlemen, hello again and welcome back to Don't Worry About the Government. My name is Chris Novembrino. Today is Friday, June 24th, 2022, and it's an unbelievably dark day. You probably already know what this show's about. It's only going to be about one thing. It's going to be about the Supreme Court decision that came down today, 6-3, outlawing Roe versus Wade, overturning Roe versus Wade, endangering medical liberty for women all across the country. Because you already have these laws that are kicking into effect immediately, and then you're going to have a continued march because this isn't going to be over until they get a national abortion ban passed through Congress when they get control of Congress here in the midterms, most likely. They'll probably be very close to doing it unless the Democrats come up with something amazing. But before all of that, an important story from my childhood popped into mind today as I read the headline this morning after I had been sleeping really weird all night, and got up and read the hot headline and was nearly in tears. Actually, I read it and I knew it was coming, and it's still it was like this shot in my chest, dude. I was having a hard time standing up because I just stand up and drink the coffee. I'm a bit of a Spartan like that. I was actually having a hard time, a really hard time, all this morning. And the first thing that I started thinking about was when I was a senior in high school. Lo those many years. The year was 2004. Holy shit. Nearly 20 years ago now. I am starting to get gray hairs, so I guess that does make sense. But the year was 2004. I was a senior in high school. I was the editor-in-chief of Desert Mountain Wolf Print, doing my thing, redesigning the paper, and trying to get the budget on track after a ill-fated flirtation with a color issue by the previous editor-in-chief had destroyed the budget of the newspaper, and things were kind of rocky the year that I was the editor-in-chief because we did not have the money that we had the previous year. And I had finally started to become, if not cool, a sort of weird sort of cool in high school where people liked me. I could play guitar okay, and I finally went from being the weird fat kid that's starting to slim up a little bit, and this would continue onwards in college and everything, but it was finally starting to happen for me in my senior year. But I've talked about this in the past. Fighting and getting into fights and getting picked on and stuff was something that was pretty common for me all through middle school and elementary school and that sort of thing. And I had to learn how to stand up for myself. But in high school, they had implemented a zero tolerance, no fighting sort of thing. And I had gotten a little bit wiser to the rules, having been on the receiving end of the rules in situations that I didn't necessarily think were fair in the past. I was like, okay, well, if the rules are the rules are the rules, well, maybe I can work the rules to my own advantage here in situations as well. Had this sort of different relationship with the law. I was trying to think about a different relationship with the law. Well, even if laws aren't legitimate, sometimes you can use their illegitimacy to your own advantage and perhaps point into people's faces that no, these laws and these rules are really illegitimate. And a situation like this presented itself at one point in my senior year Spanish class. So I'm doing Spanish, and my Spanish teacher is a lovely woman who I just I don't know, I liked her, just in the totally normal way. I mean, it wasn't I had a crush on her or anything like that. She was just Miss Presenia was cool, I don't know, a likable person. And there was this punk ass sophomore on the football team named Tyler, who basically would try to take over class every day and showboat and derailer, and he was just an asshole. And I didn't care for him, and I was sick of his antics in class. And so one day I just decided, you know what? I'm older. I've got the quicker and faster tongue here. I'm quicker witted. This guy's not that smart. And like, he thinks he's Johnny Cool Guy, but like, he's not that cool. And so I just started like roasting him all through class, like just embarrassing him, and like the girls that he was trying to impress started like laughing at him, and I was clearly getting under this dude's skin. I knew what I was doing. I was baiting this guy and trying to piss this guy off. I knew what the project here was. However, there's a zero tolerance fighting thing in school, so I was always like, well, I know what I'm doing here. But I'm going to let this guy act first, and then I'm going to call for a teacher, and he's going to go down to the principal's office because he struck me, and I didn't strike him, like, if we have to get to this. Sure enough, by the end of class, I've now pushed his buttons enough that we get out of class, and he grabs me because, like, I was short, even though I was still kind of fat, stocky, but, like, like, short, like, just slam me against the lockers, like nothing. I have a high tolerance for pain, so, like, this didn't, like, I felt it for sure, but, like, dude, he could have done that, like, he could have done that several more times before I would have, like, actually, like, been, like really registering it. I have a fairly high tolerance for, like, pain and impact like that. Every time I've ever, like, fallen off a bike or anything like that, it's just not, it doesn't affect me quite the same way. I think it hits other people. Not that I don't get hurt or anything. It just, it's not like, I don't know, some people register pain a little bit more. And so I'm, like, kind of conscious of the whole situation, and I call out for teachers. I'm like, oh my God, I'm being thrown against the lockers by Tyler Klein. Tyler, what are you doing here? You're throwing me against the lockers. I can't believe this. Why are you attacking me? And Tyler, the Spanish teacher comes out, and she sees Tyler throwing me up against the lockers, and she knows what's going on. And she goes, Tyler, go down to the principal's office. Chris, you can come into the classroom. And so Tyler is getting sent down to the principal's office. And I think basically the zero tolerance policy that my school has implemented is going to finally work to my advantage. That, like, basically, like, this guy struck me. Yes, I said mean things, but, like, sticks and stones versus words or whatever. Like that's the whole way the policy worked. Well, Tyler Klein was on the football team, and the football team gets treated differently. I'm sure this is probably not different in your high school either, right? Like, there are certain privileges that the football team is afforded that, like, the average student isn't afforded. And one of those in this case was, well, yeah, that Noven Bruno was really being a dick to me. I mean, like, being a dick in the context of a school classroom. So, like, I mean, think about, like, what is the most aggressive thing I could have gotten away with saying in front of a teacher during this? Like, I don't remember this discourse, but all I can tell you is I was, like, the setting was like, I was roasting this guy's balls in class, like, in front of the teacher who was chuckling at him. Like, I embarrassed the dude, sure, absolutely, but, like, I mean, words. You're not supposed to strike people over words. It was supposed to be open and closed. But I learned this very valuable lesson because I get called down to the office, and what they end up doing is they end up manipulating the rules where Tyler's supposed to be suspended for a whole week. And I guess theoretically I'm supposed to be suspended for a whole week as well. However, he is on the football team, and our football team, which, no joke, I believe went straight winless the entire season, that particular season. Or maybe only won one game. I can't remember if we won one or none games that season. So this is a prestigious high school football team that, like, was really on its way to winning a statewide championship. Absolutely. Maybe even competing for the national title. Do they have a losers division? Anyways, this football team was horrible. It was just an embarrassment. It was just a bunch of rich kids who couldn't play football. And they needed him for this game because, like, how are they going to lose without him? So they came up with a carve out in the rules where they found a way where it was like, well, this is an extenuating circumstance. The zero tolerance policy got an extenuating circumstance. And I got suspended for 2 days. and so did he, but that got him back just in time for the football game. So we both ended up being guilty of fighting, even though I never actually fought back. I'm sitting here going like, man, I mean, if I'm gonna get suspended, I wish I had gotten my licks in. The whole point of this was, I'm just taking them this time. Normally, I was always like, cool, all right, now it's on, and then I'd be like, he started, and like. That doesn't actually work, unfortunately. Like, which same thing with like assault laws, because it's hard to prove that. But no, like I was like, oh well, geez, I wish I got my licks in. My parents come over and they get informed of the situation, and they are also livid. I mean, my mother actually sends my father, because my mother goes, if I go, I'm going to be too angry. So she sends my dad, who normally is the one who would be the angry one. But I think like the fact that the principal was scared of Pop, Stove, and Bruno, because Pop, Stove, and Bruno is kind of intense. Wow, really, Chris? Your dad's kind of intense? No way. Yeah, no, vintage Pop, Stove, and Bruno was an intense dude for sure. And he came over, and I think the principal was kind of scared of Pop, Stove, and Bruno, especially when he was trying to explain to Pop, Stove, and Bruno what the situation was, because this is not a thing that Pop Stove is about. And I end up serving my suspension out of school. And my parents are like, do it if you want. So I just like sit at home and play video games for like 2 days and come back to school the next week. It doesn't affect my status like as like the editor-in-chief or anything like that, or in any of my classes. And actually, like a number of the teachers, as the ones who were like, that liked me, and a number of them did, sort of like made it clear that they thought what happened to me was not an okay thing. But it ended up serving as this really important lesson for me personally about justice, right? That like sometimes these rules aren't legitimate. Sometimes these laws aren't legitimate. Sometimes the law enforcement bodies are not legitimate. And you have to operate within a system as best you can, but you can either choose to accept an illegitimate system sometimes, or you can choose to do what you think is right. And I know it's a long story, but this is how I look at this Roe versus Wade thing. I mean, like when you want to start about where do my politics come from? It's increasingly not about ideology. I don't give a fuck about the founders or Marx. Read all these things. Not like I don't know what they are. I do. But it's just not how I think about politics anymore. I think about formative life experiences and how they have informed my morals and what I think is right and wrong. And to me, especially when you are faced with an unjust system, it is wrong to participate in it. It is right and correct to resist against it and operate in a way that you think is moral. And you have to be able to defend it as moral. It's not just like reject the laws. Stealing isn't moral. Killing isn't moral. And one has to be kind of out there to be sort of making those sorts of affirmative cases. You want to be trying to act in a way that like, no, like I'm trying to do what I think is right. It needs to be like sort of your guiding compass when you're defying the laws as they were. And then I'm trying to lead a moral life. But I'm looking at Roe versus Wade now, and I think there is going to be this call to a lot of us in this audience here to break the law. Which, it's not like a thing that you're supposed to encourage on air or anything like that. But what am I supposed to tell you to do? Not help women who are in need, who want access to full medical liberty the same way that men have? Is that really fair? I don't think so. I don't think that's moral. I think the only moral thing to do is to help women now. It's imperative. This is not The Handmaid's Tale. This is our fucking lives. as I said, I'm now 36. Getting older, getting older, thinking about kids, thinking about a family, thinking about the next 15, 20 years. And as I'm looking at the news today, I'm going, God, I can't live here in Texas. I mean, it was always going to be hard to keep staying in this apartment because they're trying to jack the rents up so much and the cost of living is going up so much here. But when I move out of here, why move into another apartment around here, and why try to fight the tide? I was reading an article today that in Texas, it's going to require 56% of the Democratic vote. Essentially, Democrats would have to come out and be 56 to 44 in order to flip the state legislature, because the state legislature in Texas is so gerrymandered. Democrats need 56% of statewide vote to get 50% of the House. Things aren't going to change here anytime soon, and that's the truth in a lot of these different states. I think a lot of us today, who are maybe thinking about having kids, and it doesn't even have to be that close, right? It doesn't have to be that soon. You probably want to be in the right place before you have kids. You don't want to like have a kid and then move to the right place. That's crazy. Not crazy like as in it's like a horrible choice, but like, that's adding a lot of extra stress to your life that you don't necessarily want to add in, right? I'm sitting here going, I got to move. And there's only actually a handful of states to move to. I don't think a lot of Democrats and liberals have really wrestled with how many of these states had these hair trigger laws on them. I mean, we're going to be down to the teens in states where you can have full access to abortions, and that's only until Republicans get control of Congress, and then all bets are off. I mean, the only thing that you could maybe hope for is that a Supreme Court challenge would say, no, it can still stay legal in states. But, like, do you really want to bet on that? I mean, in the interim, your last best bet is to get to a state where this stuff can be preserved, or where you feel like there's a decent chance this stuff can be preserved for the next 10 to 15 years as we try to fight for this around the rest of the country. So for me, this very likely means that I will be moving out of this state here in the not very distant future. That's the reality. Like, I think maybe you guys are like thinking about like, whoa, what about the actual politics? This is the politics of our lives. So often these debates are like, like budget debates. Wow, like defense spending is like $800 billion every year. What do you think about that? Okay, cool. No, don't get me wrong. I have opinions on that. It's just so much more direct this time, right? It's you're dating somebody and she's not sure if you're the one. You're not sure if she's the one. All of a sudden you're pregnant. And the state is saying, you got to have a kid with this person. Like, that's what's on the line here this time around. Gas prices are bad. Worried about inflation. Yep. Worried about those things. But, like, this is about the state having a direct impact on who I have to have family with. And the state being able, for me as a man, forcing me to have family. And for a woman, even worse, forcing them to gestate. But it's forced on both sides. I obviously I'm more concerned about the women's side of this, but I sort of want to illustrate the holistic picture here, because it's like it will affect all of us every day. Still on Tinder, still dating. Or Bumble, what was the other one? I was on it too. I don't know. Dating apps. You've heard of them, surely. Dating apps, right? Like you use them. They're in the app store. You probably been on dates using them. As you go on dates using them, as you're dating people, this is going to be a thing hanging over your head. And in my case, now it's like you have to have the discussions with the people you're dating about moving. Because if I have kids, I don't want to have them in a state where my daughter, if I have a daughter, doesn't have full reproductive rights, or can't, if she turns out to be trans or gay, can't actually explore what that means for herself. This is the politics of our lives. This is why the Twitter account's tagline is, above all else, social conservatism must be defeated, because there's a lot of like government programs and things that we could do. I mean, shit, like I've talked a lot about on the show about helping the homeless. I got bigger thoughts about bigger things too. But every one of us now is having our lives touched by this, if whether we want it to be this way or not. And don't get it twisted. There are a lot of Republican voting dudes right now, especially young, khaki, truck-driving Republican voting dudes right now, who think this is gee golly swell. But I suspect when they have a kid with somebody they didn't necessarily want to have a family with and didn't want to like be permanently tied in with for the rest of their lives, they'll be thinking a little bit more about this Roe versus Wade thing and be thinking, maybe having a choice wouldn't have been a bad thing here. Maybe it would have been good if she had had a choice too. Especially when you get into a fight and she says, I never even wanted to have kids with you. Boy, maybe you'll be thinking about it on that day. I'm sure this is going to happen. On the last episode, we talked about Brooke Alexander. I put like one name to what this looks like, but now this is all of us, right? Like, that's why I wanted to, I guess, talk about me on this episode. Certainly something I'm an expert on, Lord knows. Real quickly, the other reason I'm doing an episode select quickly, like back to back like this, and this is just like for Patreon patrons only here, is because all y'all responded like heavily on the monologue episode thing and in the affirmative, which was dope, like really dope, because I was feeling kind of shitty. Like I read the news and I was feeling like not good. And then like I went on the Patreon and I was just like, I wonder if anyone responded to the monologue poll, right? And I looked and I saw 10 votes and they were all yes. And initially I thought it was like a glitch, right? And so then I downloaded the actual results and I saw all y'all's names. And you did it, like you actually voted, and you all wanted this, and like that was very cool. That was very cool on a day that has not been like the most rad of days. So thank you. And this is my way of saying thanks on that. I went to lunch with my parents today, and I talked to them about my plans. Mentioned to them that I've even listed my prized Fender DeVille, Hot Rod DeVille 212, Fender, or DeVille 3, the big tube amp. I have a smaller tube amp that I like just fine. But I'm listening to that on Craigslist. I'm going to be selling some pedals. If you want Nove gear, Nove used, it has true, genuine Nove mojo on it. Hit me up and I'll let you know some of the stuff I'm trying to offload here. I will absolutely ship it out to y'all, and since y'all are Patreons and supporters and everything like that, I will give you an exceedingly reasonable price on some of this stuff. So, if you're interested in guitar gear, hit me up. Not a pitch, but no, I'm like getting stuff in order, and I let them know like how serious this is. I'm gonna take a trip out to New Mexico here late August, September, and take a look at Albuquerque and just make sure that it's my speed here. But it's so real now. Like I think about, okay, what if I stay here? Okay, let's suppose I meet the right woman. I get a good deal on a house here. My parents are here. We stay here. Now you got to put the kid in school, right? And all over the Dallas Metroplex, we have been fighting the culture war in school on critical race theory and, all this other stuff. Teaching evolution in school, alongside faith-based, mystical beliefs about science and that sort of thing. Do I really want this for my kids? Is this like really a great thing for my kids? Or can I find better schools in Albuquerque and in New Mexico? My mother was fighting me at lunch going, well, it's not like that at every school. And I pointed out to her that like Yeah, you're right. That's why they're going to keep trying to pass stuff through their stupid little Texas state legislature until it is like that. That they've made it really, really clear that like they are going to fight this culture war. I was half tempted to do the entire state charter, the Republicans that like they dropped this week here for Texas. But like I don't. I mean, a lot of it's not really surprising. It's just like they're all in on the culture war now. Ken, shout out Ken directly here. Thank you, Ken. Gave me kudos for being like going like you nailed it. That they're going after Griswold and that they're going after Obergefell. That like Roe was not the end of it. It's not the end of the line. No. Like they're gonna go for a nationwide abortion ban. I'm listening to NPR today, already hearing that. You saw Clarence Thomas's opinion, where he's like, well, this gives us reason to go after Obergefell. And it also gives us reason to go after Griswold. And while that was not the majority opinion, and this is what like the, oh, it's not so bad crowd will try to tell you, what Clarence Thomas is saying to like Ken Paxton and whoever the AG is in Florida is, bring this to us. I want this fight. Sammy Alito and me, we want this fight. Because Roberts is a little nutless bitch, right? Like today, they're throwing roses at Roberts' feet. Oh, well, Roberts had like a moderate, opinion here. He wanted to get to the exact same place as all the other five. He just wanted to get there in a slower way where people like us maybe wouldn't realize it. Like he just thinks we're dupes, and that by slowing down the walk, they could pull this one off. And he might be right, because you've got people like Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi who, by having these muted, oh, this is very sad responses, are sort of saying to all of us, oh, it's not so bad. Oh, it's not so bad. But it is that bad. I didn't know for sure that the Roe versus Wade decision was going to drop today. But I mean, if you go and listen to the last show here, which I did a little bit before I hopped on the air here, it's not like you can't hear it in my voice. We knew this was coming. The only person who seemingly didn't know it was coming, or who at least have been acting like it's not coming for the last 6 weeks, have been the Democratic leadership. Apparently Joe Biden's been quietly meeting behind the scenes, but that's the whole operant word, right? Quietly. Look at the adverb here. Yeah, he's been meeting, but it's quietly. And he does what today. This is a very sad day. It's not a very sad day. This is a maddening day. This is a delegitimizing day for the court. Where the hell is your blue ribbon Supreme Court panel? Nancy Pelosi's very sad. Oh, the reproductive rights are on the ballot here in November. Okay, but like you wouldn't vote on court expansion. And like that's the other part of this, right? Like they're also trying to just dress this down. This is about reproductive rights. But as we have now seen, and as I got into on the last episode, and as I've talked about before, again, I'm not trying to pat myself on the back here on this. I really want to be clear on this. It's not about that. It's that, like, I think that, like, if you just look at this stuff, it's fairly straightforward. So I don't view any of these insights as deep ones. So I don't feel like it makes me all that smart. I think it's very clear, especially now you look at what Thomas said. We're doing this. We're going to go for all of this stuff here. But Pelosi's still not in favor of expanding the court. This isn't just about reproductive rights. This is about rights and civil liberties across the board. This is about Miranda. This is about access to contraception. I was just reading in between taping the last episode and this episode here. Let me get the article up here. A pill used to terminate early pregnancies is unlikely to become available without prescription for years, if ever, experts say, as the conservative-leaning U.S. Supreme Court is expected to dramatically curb abortion rights in the coming weeks. So there's a new abortion pill, that's from Reuters, new abortion pill on the market, and women aren't going to have access to it. How retrograde is this? This is so retrograde. This is not a joke. It's going to sound like a punchline, but it's not. That Boris Johnson, the British Donald Trump, said, I want to get the Boris Johnson quote up here. Again, not a joke. Not to sound like Joe Biden, who like that's all he ever says, right? Not a joke. This is not a joke. Let's get us a little bit of Bojo here. Oh, not Speaker Pelosi. Boris Johnson. Quote, "This is not our court. It's another jurisdiction, but it clearly has massive impacts on people's thinking around the world." I think it's a big step backwards. Boris Johnson, the Brexit guy. He's currently crashing his country's economy into the ground. Finbar will tell you all about that. Next time we have him on here. Love Finbar, by the way. He's awesome. Yeah. Like this is where we're at. Even the British conservatives, the Tories, are like, whoa, that's nutso potatoes. What are you guys doing? Like, we're so far through the looking glass. And when I've been talking about for the last 6 months that the Democratic leadership is not up to the fight, this is what I am talking about. When I'm talking about the moment, this is what I am talking about. And I'm not convinced that, actually, I am convinced to the negative, that the Nina Turners of the world are up to fighting this fight because they don't know how to. Even if they're well-intentioned, I think they're too stupid. You can have good intentions but be too stupid to actually act on them, and that's how I classify people like Nina Turner. And then, unfortunately, AOC, who I think is actually in the perfect sweet spot of gets it and gets how to fight for this, is not old enough yet to fully wrangle leadership from the party here. And now the knives are going to be out for her hardcore look at what happened with Cisneros. And I think Democratic leadership is going to feel particularly threatened because this abortion thing is going to be a wedge thing in our caucus. So, yeah, when I'm saying Democratic leadership is not up to the fight, when I'm talking about the Boomercrats not being up to the fight on this, other than Sanders and Warren, these are the moments. This is why I support a primary. Listen to Biden's speech today. Listen to his little weenie speech. Oh, it's a sad day. Oh, it's a sad day. What was his other little quote? Oh, let us not go out and do violence. Where's his "let's not go out and do violence" quote? What are we supposed to do, Joe? What are we supposed to do? Like the way Biden's speech came out, right? Biden's speech sounded like someone who was quietly quite all right with the outcome of the day, but knew better than to say that. Like, when your mom hears that you broke up with your girlfriend that she never really cared for. Joe Biden sounded like that today. Oh, God, Chris, I'm so sorry. Jeez Louise. You tell me Alicia dumped you? Oh, God. God, that's horrible. Oh, jeez. Yeah, that's Joe Biden today on abortion because, just like Pelosi, they've always had this little squishy, mealy-mouthed sort of approach to it. And Pelosi, let us not forget, just spent the last 3 months doing the Lord's work for Henry Cuellar, one of the most prominent anti-abortion Democrats in Congress. Biden goes, "I call on everyone, no matter how deeply they care about this decision, to keep all protests peaceful. Peaceful, peaceful, peaceful. No intimidation. Violence is never acceptable. Threats and intimidation are not speech." And yeah, I know some people will be like, well, I mean, what's so controversial about the idea of violence is never acceptable or whatever? Well, I think there are a lot of different ways to do violence. I think what the Supreme Court has done today is violence. I think what Republican state legislatures are doing is violence. I think what national right-to-lifers are doing is violence. In the same way that I would view any one of you for what could only be attributed to purely psychotic reasons, which is actually something to think about as we're talking about this on a political stance, right? Because consider the scenario. One of y'all decides that it's your place to get involved in my relationship. That you just need to reach out to that lady in my life and tell her something about me. Let's even pretend it's a good thing. That's weird, right? That is you getting into my life. I guess conversely, imagine if I did the same to you, right? I just decided to hit up your wife and go, "Hey, I'm beloved radio personality Chris Novembrino. I just wanted to say that you should or should not have that child. Keep the baby. Like, that's weird. And that's just me doing it as a suggestion. We're not even talking about this as like a mandate that like I, Chris Novembrino, empowered with the force of law, think you should keep the baby. And yet, this is what pro-lifers are doing. It's violent. Like, yeah, like I'm not slapping you. Lord knows we know how bad slaps can be. But like, you know, I think you can terrorize someone's life in ways that don't actually involve like throwing a punch or doing a kick or whatever. Like, you can damage someone's reputation or whatever. Like, you can do something that is violence, not physical violence, but a psychic violence, any sort of violence. And yet Joe Biden's sort of response here doesn't seem to really account for the reality that what has been done today to women, in the immediate, in like 20-something states across the country here with these like hair trigger bans. Maybe it's in the teens or whatever, the hair trigger bans, but there's other ones that are kicking within weeks here. What has been done to women today is violence, and I don't know, like you come after the people in my life, like I think I should stand up and fight for them. You don't want to just strike the people who don't deserve it, but like, frankly, I don't think it should be very easy for Sam Alito and Clarence Thomas and Brett Kavanaugh and Neil Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett and the Chief Stooge John Roberts to sleep at night. I don't. You shouldn't be able to rest easy after harming people. I don't know. Like that's my sense of morality. And Biden leaves me cold on that, but even worse still, it's like, where's Joe? All right, now he's going to go back and take a nap here? Don't get me wrong. I view President Alzheimer's as a marked improvement to President Dementia. President Dementia would have been clearly applauding all of this today after, of course, making the tail end of the COVID crisis even worse and finding a way to pat himself on the back here. But Biden, like, he doesn't care. It's so obvious he doesn't care. Pelosi doesn't care. You don't go out and support Henry Cuellar, who got a big shot in the arm after the leaking of the draft. Like I did the TikTok on that specifically, not the video, but like the actual like how did that all play out? We spent a little bit of extra time on the last episode specifically to make the case against Pelosi on this, because like she chose to run into the fire. She wanted to be there. She wanted to be there at the back end of all of this. Cuellar's like, love going after abortion, want to get rid of it, and Pelosi's like, yeah, well, Cisneros, boo, yeah, Cuellar, yeah. So you don't get this, you don't get to go on and put on your women kente cloth today, and pretend you care about this. It's this hollow lip service gesture from the Democratic leadership. A third party isn't going to fix this, by the way. A united front against the Republican Party, especially at the state-based levels, is essential at this point. What needs to happen is a hostile takeover of the Democratic Party by everyone who wants to see a more muscular Democratic Party that is up to the task and the challenges of fighting against the post-Donald Trump version of American conservatism. Let us say conjecturally that Trumpism acutely is past. Perhaps there's a second wave, just like COVID. But even if it's past, like, you know, the Republican Party now has long Trumpism, right? Like just like long COVID, there are certain symptoms that will continue to linger in this party well on after Trump is gone. There were people who were always fond about talking about like Trump as a symptom and not the disease or whatever. Cool. We now have an acutely in focus metaphor for diseases, national diseases in our minds. Isn't it wonderful to live in interesting times, people? Come on, big round of applause for interesting times. So, like, we now have lived through this. But sometimes, as we've learned, symptoms of the disease last on well after the disease has passed, which is actually what makes symptoms even more scary than diseases sometimes, right? And the symptoms of Trumpism, in part, which include delighting in immiserating people such as myself, delighting in immiserating people like you, depending on what your identity status is here, even if you're just simply a Democratic voter. They delight in this. That's a Trump thing. That's a Trump thing. I think it's always sort of been there with the country club Republicans, but like country club Republicans like try to train their kids to not be like that, so that like you can kind of like they're quietly they enjoy it. They in the bedroom they'll joke about we really own those little silly liberals or whatever today, but like they knew better than to be like I own the libs or whatever. Like now they got like Elon Musk and Donald Trump, and they've like learned this whole culture of like owning the libs. They delight in seeing us sad. Lib tears, right? Lib tears. That's going to stay around here. And we need a Democratic Party and people in Democratic leadership who are up to the task of fighting against people like Matt Gaetz and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and Madison Cawthorn and like this new crop of it feels like every 15 years it's like, oh, this class of Republicans is even more crazy than the last one. But like you look at the Gingrich class, the Compact for America class versus the Tea Party class versus the Trump class of congressional Republicans, and like it's like an evolutionary chart that goes the other way. They of course don't believe in evolution, but like if you will, like there's an increasing lack of refinement. Like not saying I liked Gingrich's big ideas, but like Gingrich had like big ideas and like documents and stuff. Like wanted to like work with Clinton and complicated dude. Not a fan. Not standing Newt Gingrich. I'm not like doing what these dopes have been doing with Liz Cheney, who like would still vote against her own sister's gay marriage. Would probably be okay with the repeal of Obergefell. And was a birther. I'm not trying to do that with Gingrich. I want to be clear here. I'm just saying like Gingrich at least would do that. Matt Gaetz, not chance, right? Like not a chance with Matt Gaetz, and that means something. The Democratic Party is just not up to this task. The Joe Biden is not up to this task. Kamala Harris is not willing to say, "Hey, we need to fight harder here." And they need to say it out loud. Like this whole, quietly behind the scenes, I mean, which is always the defense. Oh, quietly behind the scenes. Oh, quietly behind the scenes. Quietly behind the scenes. But they need to be doing this openly and in the public eye. Openly and in the public eye. Openly and in the public eye. I want to see if there's anything that changed in the final draft here. I'm reading Politico's article here. I'll just throw it up. Let's do, at the risk of crashing the video a second time here. Let's share screens. Let's open up the video portion of this thing here. All right. Alito, in his final opinion, takes issue with Roberts' reasoning. I mean, this makes it clear. Like they're going to be fighting against Roberts, and like they may get Roberts to performatively do X, Y, or Z, but like he ultimately, the more Roberts fights, the more they're going to fight against Roberts, is sort of the way I see this. The concurrence quest for a middle way would only put off the day when we would be forced to confront the question we now decide. See, they're even saying it. This whole middle ground stuff, we're not interested in it. We're not interested in small strokes. No. We got to be bold. We got to be brave. We got to do the right thing here. As Alito continues on, the turmoil wrought by Roe and Casey would be prolonged. It is far better for this court and the country to face up to the real issue without further delay. They're not going to stop. Reasonable opportunity is not constitutional. Let me stop the video here because I'm already starting to see it. Alito also took aim at an argument that Roberts laid out for giving people seeking an abortion reasonable opportunity to obtain one. So here's the thing that we have to really be on guard with. Like right now, there's a preservation of the ability to leave the state to go get an abortion and that sort of thing. And I think the next thing that's coming down the pipeline here is basically saying doing that is aiding and abetting a crime in the state. That essentially one state has the right to to sort of supersede another state's right. You know, like so that like Texas, if you are a citizen of Texas, you are subject to the abortion laws of Texas, even if you leave the state. Alito seems to be taking aim at that against Roberts here. Alito also took aim at the argument Roberts laid out for giving people seeking an abortion the reasonable opportunity to seek one, such as in Mississippi with their abortion ban after 15 weeks of pregnancy. Alito said there are no constitutional grounds for upholding that rule, and that since Roberts had made no claim that the right to an abortion is constitutional, his proposal to uphold the Mississippi limit would also not be supported by the Constitution. If the Constitution protects a woman's right to obtain abortion, the opinion does not explain why that right should end after the point at which, quote, all reasonable women will have decided whether to seek an abortion, Alito writes. Dissent can't show a constitutional right to abortion. That's the other part here. Alito's final opinion also differs from the draft document because it adds a rebuttal to the liberal justice's dissent. This is going to be a fight, people. This is going to be a fight. Breyer, Sotomayor, and Alaga Kagan delivered the scathing dissent that rebuked the court for upending the balance Roe had cemented for nearly 50 years, respecting a woman as an autonomous being and also protecting the life of a fetus. And, like, let's be clear, the fetus has quote-unquote life is really the core of the problem. Liberals trying to do this balancing act, liberals trying to indulge the metaphysics that like there's a middle point in the pregnancy where it goes from not being alive to being alive has always been absurd. It has to begin at gestation. Life has to begin at gestation. It's the only line that's actually defensible. That actually medical liberty goes all the way up to gestation. You might say like you can close it like I don't know 1 month prior to like the end of a pregnancy, right? That basically the doctors can invoke Hippocratic oath and say that it's actually going to bring you medical harm for us to try to terminate your pregnancy instead of completing the pregnancy normally. And I'm sure there's actually probably some medical defense for that. But like the line clearly has to be life begins at gestation, and that there needs to be certain protections towards the end of pregnancy so that like people don't do essentially like things that are medically ill-advised, like, you know, ending a pregnancy the week that you're supposed to be due would be, I think, again, I'm not a doctor, but like if one of y'all wants to poke around on this and see if there's any like meat to back me up on this, I think there probably is. I feel like ending a pregnancy like 7 days before you're actually due or like 2 weeks before you're actually due would be considered by most doctors to be a dangerous thing to do, and that you're better off at that stage to just complete the gestational process as is already going on. Like you're this far along the lines, you can put the child up for adoption afterwards. It's not even necessarily, I mean, I know this might sound cold, but it's like not even necessarily about the child. It's just like, it's hard to defend that under the Hippocratic oath would be sort of my thought process on this. But the problem with the safe, legal, and rare bullshit has always been that liberals, I'll use the buzzword liberals construction today, whatever, because it does sort of work for like your Ruth Bader Ginsburgs and that sort of thing. Liberals have always been like safe, legal, and rare, because it campaigns well. You see, it polls well, rather than putting a line on the ground and fighting for it, which is, you know, I hate them. They're our sworn enemies, right? But like, you gotta hand it to the cons. The cons, they pick a target. They pick a goalpost and they push at it for 50 fucking years here, and they're not done. Like they're like, touchdown? No. This is like the 20-yard line, and you're like, wait, what? And they're like, oh no, we're not done until like literally we can tell every single one of you have to have kids. Like we're not done until we outlaw vasectomies, right? We're not done until like, you know, elective vasectomies and hysterectomies are not even legal. That like one has to say reproductively viable until the end of time. Maybe they wouldn't go that far. Maybe. Do you want to bet on it? I don't. I don't. I know. Like they haven't said that yet, but like I say that out loud. Does that really sound crazy? It says it only sounds like 25% crazy now, right? Like as you're sitting here looking at the headlines today, maybe 35 to 45% crazy, right? Like sufficiently crazy that you probably are going, I really don't think that's gonna happen. But then like part of you is going right now, oh, what if he's saying? What if he's kind of right? What if they actually did that? What if they were like, what if vasectomies caught on, and they actually did go after vasectomies, and they were like, no, you dudes aren't going to be able to pull yourself out of the pool. We need to protect birth rates in this country. You see, I mean, you can see it, right? Like you can now see it in your head now. Alito continued on, and he shot down the dissenters' arguments that Roe could be defended on prior court precedent, saying that none of the precedents the case was based on involved the destruction of what Roe called, quote, potential life. And this is, again, the problem. Just this whole construction here. The justice also argued that the adherence to precedent is not an inexorable command. He went on in his opinion to name instances in which the court did overrule precedents, including separate but equal doctrines in Brown versus Board of Education and Plessy versus Ferguson. So when you look at the Alito opinion, which is the dominant opinion, and the concurring Thomas opinion as well here, oh, you're seeing it now, right? You're seeing it. This is page 48. Roe can't be defended on prior precedent. Let's read a little bit of that. Some of our most important constitutional decisions have been overruled prior precedents. We mentioned 3. And Brown v. Board of Education, because they care about that. They care so much about equality as they overturn Voting Rights Act rules and that sort of thing, saying that this sort of stuff is over. Why do we even need Brown versus Board of Education anymore? Isn't separate but equal over? The court repudiated separate but equal doctrine, which had allowed states to maintain racially segregated schools and other facilities. In doing so, the court overruled the infamous Plessy v. Ferguson decision, along with 6 other Supreme Court precedents that it had applied. Like in West Coast Hotel v. Parrish, which had, we're talking about minimum wage. No, they're trying to use their most woke decisions. Oh, we helped out women this one time. This is great. West Coast Hotel versus Parrish overruled the Adkins v. Children's Hospital of D.C. decision, which held that a law setting minimum wages for women violated the liberty protected by the Fifth Amendment's Due Process Clause. Wait a second. Wow. So this is like not even like an actually cool one. West Coast Hotel signaled the demise of an entire line of important precedents that had protected an individual liberty right against state and federal health and welfare legislation. Holy shit. So like they had a minimum wage law, they overturned it, and Alito's like, yeah, see, this is good. I think that's what's going on here. Again, comment, let me know if I've got that one wrong. Lochner versus New York, holding invalid a rule setting maximum working hours. Holy shit. Like, what they're citing of other times they've overturned precedent are like labor laws, when people tried to come in and pass labor laws, and they're like, no, we had a conservative Supreme Court here in the 1920s under Taft. See, I know some things, right? Like, you weren't expecting me to drop like who the Chief Justice was. Yeah, it was Taft. Anyways, like you had this conservative Supreme Court prior to the Warren court and the liberal court here. And they were overturning all these laws. And now 100 years later, essentially the conservatives are going to look at that and go, this is a shining time in the court, and see like they overturned precedent. And you can see Alito just really paving the road for overturning precedent, legislating from the bench. The thing that like, if you're in the coveted 36 to 50 demographic, as I now am, I'm going to rise myself about getting older. Feel free to join in. if you're in this coveted demo, like we all remember the whole, I don't like the legislating from the bench. I don't like these liberal Supreme Court justices because they legislate from the bench. Alito, like in this first year of the Republican Supreme Court supermajority that will go on till the end of time, is already like, all right, get ready because we are going to just turn over anything we don't like. We've done it before. We can do it again. After years of being like originalism, got to interpret the document the original way. Originalism, president, like the whole thing with originalism sort of supposed that like laws are immutable, that like you're not supposed to ever overturn stuff. But yeah, you can see what they're doing here. You can see the game being played. This is such a dark day. Such a dark day. And I mean, I guess like I guess it just sort of like really begs the question here of what is going to happen? What are we going to do? It'd be so much easier to bear the high gas prices, the increasing rent prices, the inflation. It really would be if I looked at the White House and the leaders in Congress and I saw people who I believed earnestly that I voted for were doing my best to fight against the people I vote against and fighting on my behalf to try to fix this Supreme Court that they feel with the same degree of intensity I feel is illegitimate and is making decisions that are in violation to the concept of what personal liberty is, that are bad for the country, that will not stand the test of time, and are frankly only going to lead to greater division. Like, what's the whole vibe of this show been for the last several months? Fighting, like it opened up with fighting, because and like the immorality of not feeling like this is something worth fighting for. There was actually a show called that, right? If I could look at Democratic leadership in DC and be like, okay, those people are doing their best to fight against it. I know we're going to win some, we're going to lose some, but at least my team's fighting hard. It'd be so much easier to bear the high gas prices. It'd be so much easier to deal with the inflation. It'd be so much easier to like hear the shit jokes about Joe Biden and like actually want to say anything like, fuck Trump. Like, dude, your guy was horrible. Your guy was a fucking moron. Like, you guys voted for the dumbest fucking dude who's ever been president in our lifetimes. But like, you have to basically go back to Andrew Johnson to come up with like a dumb. I'm talking about dumb. Like, not even like bad president. Just like the guy's a moron. He's a fucking moron. And like in a way that. Clinton wasn't, Herbert Walker Bush wasn't, Carter's definitely not, Nixon definitely isn't, Kennedy wasn't a moron. I mean, you just don't have like this unsophisticated guy. Like I want to call him like an insophisticate, but that's like not a word. Unsophisticated guy. You're hard pressed to find someone you really like anywhere in the last 120 years. It really does feel like I have to go all the way back to Andrew Johnson to find someone as like, sloppy jalopy as Donald Trump was. This guy was like an absolute putz. But like, I don't have any energy for Joe Biden. I don't want to pick up the sword for this guy. I can't defend this guy. I didn't vote for him in the primaries. I told everyone we don't want this guy. I called him Joey Time Bomb. Guess what's happening? Time bomb going off, baby. Kaboom. This is what a time bomb exploding looks like. Yeah, okay. Yes, I know. Let's be clear. I'm not like trying to like sanitize my prediction back in the day. I very clearly said that his primary campaign was going to implode. Not like, oh, his presidency will implode because he will do a bad. I'm not trying to like damage control my own position here, but like. There are lots of ways for a politician to go kaboomy. And Joe Biden and the Democratic Party absolutely have fucked this moment. They have absolutely screwed it up. And they are not up for the fight. They're not up for the fight, but that fight must be had unless you want these people to get more and more in our lives. I'll end the show on this note. I don't really talk about this one a whole lot, and I mean, I guess maybe I'm a little more comfortable doing it because it's like on the Patreon or whatever. But when I was in college, my girlfriend at the time and I, and we were in Texas, by the way. Right down the street is actually where we went. It's no longer open. I got my girlfriend at the time pregnant. She did not want to have the kid. I told her immediately when she told me that she was pregnant that I'll do whatever she wants because it's not my choice. It's her choice. It's her body. Like, this has been so easy for me since I was part of the reason why I get so short with people for whom this is not easy with is like, I don't know, this has been so easy for me my whole life. Like, I'm not a perfect dude. I'm not saying I'm like, you know, like this perfect dude or whatever. I'm just saying, like, on this one, it's always been so clear. It's never been close. I have a right to tell the person I'm dating what to do with her body on something as important as that. In the same way that you don't have the right to tell your girlfriend to get on the pill. Like, if she wants to get on the pill, she'll get on the pill. And if she doesn't want to get on the pill, but she still wants to have sex and she wants to have safe sex, you need to wear a condom. Like, you don't have the... You could be like, I would like it if you got on the pill. But, like, you know, yelling at her, I want you on the pill, was monstrous, right? The year was 2005. I knew this. It's not hard. A lot of us knew this 20 years ago. Like, our generation, we fucked some shit up, but we've gotten some stuff, right? Some of it. Some of us. Sometimes. Okay. Work to be done. Anyways, I'm informed that she's pregnant and she wants to get an abortion. I'm like, of course. And we're both in school. She didn't have a part-time job. I did. So, actually at the time I was teaching guitar lessons. So I just went and I got the money and I paid for it. It just seemed like the right thing to do. It wasn't like, it seemed like the right thing to do, and it seemed like the only way we could do it where it wouldn't show up in her, you know, like on her financial transactions or anything like that. We didn't want her parents to see anything. You know, like we were trying to like preserve her privacy and stuff there. And you know, I went ahead and did what needed to be done. And we got the money. And I remember that day we had to drive from Denton all the way out to this side of Dallas here, which is about an hour drive. And it's a quiet, uncomfortable drive there. Then we got to the facility and I walked her in. And I was not allowed to go in with her. I was not allowed to stay in the waiting room. So I had to just go back out to my car. And I just sat there. And I just thought about stuff. Like, a lot of different things. I don't remember all of it. I remember how I felt. It was a heavy day. And then she came out and I don't even know how to describe it. She was hurt. She was hurting. And I hated, most of all, as I said earlier, like, throw me up against the locker. I hated that I couldn't, oh yeah, I could pony up the cash. But shit, man, I would have fucking offloaded the pain onto me too. I felt so empty and so powerless. And, like, I'm like a year or two older than her. So I'm trying to be like the mature one or whatever. I'm like fucking 20, right? Like, what the fuck? And I'm trying to be strong. It's hard. But I like, and there's nothing I could do. I couldn't be in the room with her. I couldn't hold her hand as it was happening. I couldn't. I couldn't. The laws did not allow me to do that. The laws were already in place to make the process a painful one, where like they made her like listen to the heartbeat and all that other shit. Wouldn't allow me into the meeting, so it could just be her, so that they could counsel her on the options and stuff. Like, I mean, one of the most disgusting parts of this process is they really strip away the man from the woman during this process. With one breath, they're like, "Oh, it's about families. It's about families. It's about families." But like, if you two as a couple choose to terminate a pregnancy, oh, that's not a joint operation. It can't be, even if you both want it to be. Again, I'm not saying that like one should be forced to do that, but like, she wanted me there and I wanted to be there, man. She needed me there, and I kind of needed to be there. And it made it harder and more painful for no one's benefit but fucking Christian moralists, that like we had to do that by ourselves. And Christian moralists will never be able to look me in my eyes. And I mean, shit, if you want my tears, asshole, fucking like look me in my eyes and drink them in, ass. Like, you want them, fucking soak them in. Don't be a coward. Don't be so afraid. If you want to look the crying people in the face and fucking, own it. But that's the worst part. They're cowards. I remember seeing those fuckers outside the clinic too with the signs. While I was like sitting in the car. And I wanted to do something. I didn't, but I wanted to. And then we were in the car, in my little Volkswagen Beetle, and we drove back. And for as quiet and awkward as the drive there was, the drive back was like so much worse. So much worse. I could just feel pain radiating off her body, and I couldn't say anything. I wanted... There weren't words. And I'm Mr. Words, right? Oh, you can grab a microphone and fucking do a monologue in a heartbeat. Surely you've got some words for this. Even then, I wanted to be radio boy. I hadn't quite started doing it, but like, I was on the debate team, blah, blah, blah. Oh, you got away with words, Chris. Couldn't even fucking come up with a goddamn thing to say. Not a fucking thing, because you know what? There's nothing to say. Nothing to say. And the stuff I wanted to do, I either physically can't do because I don't have those powers, or the state had stripped away those powers from me. So I'm just there, and I'm powerless, and we're driving, and we get back, and she goes and lays down in her apartment, and I sit in the living room on her futon that had these horrible springs that absolutely fucked up my back so bad for like a year and a half. They were horrible. I eventually convinced her to like throw out that futon. It was a horrible futon. We stayed together for a while after. Needless to say, she appreciated what I did there. I'm sure she has negative things to say about me, but not during any of that time. I tried to do everything I possibly could, and I think honestly my conduct has aged extraordinarily favorably 20 years out, which can't always say that about old Novi, but I can definitely on that one. So why did I end with this story? There are people, and I'm sorry, I needed to have the camera off during that one. I apologize. There are people who would say I was a murderer. Honestly. My parents' friends. There are people among my parents who would dead ass actually say, Mike and Diane, your son Chris is a murderer. Your son Chris committed murder. And it's not true. It's not true. That wasn't a murder. That was the right thing to do. For her, for me. And it's so important that we had that choice. It's so important that she had that choice. And I can't help but think with all of this how different my life would be if I now had a 16-year-old child. And not better. I know the child would be a blessing. Don't get me wrong. Like, I mean, like, look at how much I enjoy teaching and stuff. I think it's fairly clear, although it wouldn't have been immediately apparent. I think it's fairly clear I would have, like, figured out a way to be a good dad, but we would not have stayed together. We were too different on too many things. So would we have been good co-parents? God knows. I mean, she's in Arizona, I'm in Texas, and like that seems like it would have been fairly certain given like where our parents are. And where we ended up finishing up college and stuff like that. So what then? Do I move out to Arizona and then we like fight as we have to try to like live together and raise a kid at the same time, and I have to try to find a job in my 20s? I mean, and she's still going to school. We're co-parenting. I mean, like, that's a mess. Or like, we're using one of our sets of parents as grandparents. I mean, it's just an absolute mess. And it was the right thing to do for us to not do that. And it's so important. I mean, we were supposed to live in this country, the right to life, right? Well, like, the pursuit of happiness and liberty are what are supposed to be the contents of that life, right? Like, they go, the right to life actually precedes liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Yeah, right, because it's like first you're born, and then you're supposed to be free, and you're supposed to be happy. Like, be able to pursue happiness as freely as possible. And like, yeah, I get that's wishy-washy. I sort of look at them as like arrow, arrow, arrow. Life leads to liberty, which leads to happiness. That we want to try to make people, and like liberty can also be like the FDR construction, like freedom from want, like the liberty to be free of certain problems. Like there are many different ways one can be free. I think this is just so essential, and now we're on this dividing line, culturally speaking, where there are those of you who like listening to this show, and then there are other people who would never want to listen to a show hosted by a murderer, right? And that's another thing that's coming down the pike here. Obviously, I guess maybe the last thing I'm thinking about is, we talked about Obergefell and Griswold being outlawed, right? Next, it's going to be aiding and abetting abortion across state lines. And then, ultimately, if they're actually serious that abortion is murder, trials for men and women who facilitate an abortion that are based around the premise of murder. And, like, I find myself in my head thinking about going to court, and what would I do in a court if I had to defend myself as a murderer for what I did. The statute of limitations for murder, by the way, like some states it never runs out, right? Like maybe I just told you all about a crime that I committed, not the first time. This is theoretically a very bad one that the statute of limitations is not run out on yet. This is crazy. There's so much on the line now. And it's worth fighting for. This is not a society that we want the future to be built around. This ideology, this mystical religious mysticism masquerading as politics. It's mysticism informed by the dominant national metaphysical belief that there is a being in the sky who is pure love, had a kid too, pure love. But the one thing that bothers him and his kid, who is also him, bit confusing, bear with me here, people. The one thing that bothers him and his kid beyond all else, specifically him, his kid seems to be less bothered by it, but him, butt sex, hates it, Hates it, hates it, hates it. And because there are enough people in this country who believe that that guy exists. And like, I know it's like maybe a crass joke or whatever, but like, remember, the next thing we're going after is Obergefell. So is it that crass of a joke, or am I maybe sort of cutting to the heart of it in a way that like hurts because it's true? I'm gonna think the leaning here is hurts because it's true. This is what we are up against now. I'm not a murderer. I don't think women are second-class citizens. I think gay people have the right to get married. I mean, I keep going on. I don't want to sound like one of those stupid liberal yard signs. But yeah, all these things are worth fighting for me. And I hope, and honestly, in a way, like just like looking at the poll today, I kind of trust that this is true for all of you here, too, as well. So thanks. Y'all are my people, and I appreciate that. That's going to do it for this extra-sode of Don't Worry About the Government for you guys. So you know where to follow me. You know where to find the Patreon. You're on the Patreon, clearly. And until the next one, which, given that you like monologue shows sooner rather than later, until the next one, bye-bye.